Anybody out there interested in the EF-EOS M2 from Viltrox, the speed booster for the Canon M50? Well, I was until I shot the video. Stick around and see what I found out. Hey everybody, Peter Faciano here. Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. In today's video, I'm going to go ahead and cover the Viltrox speed booster for the M50, the EF-EOS M2. This is going to be kind of a long one, maybe around 15 minutes. If you're not at all interested in a speed booster for the M50, I would just go ahead and skip this video altogether. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you. I'm going to throw some different examples. I'm going to be changing focal lengths on the camera. I'm going to be going from 1080p to 4K. I'm going to go through all the focal lengths of the Sigma 18 to 35. I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm not impressed. There is terrible vignetting in stills and in video. The vignetting is really heavy on the lower focal lengths, 18 millimeter, and I think it kind of goes away as you go up. So as we get to the, 24 millimeter range and up, I believe the video vignetting goes away in 1080p. And I don't think there's any vignetting in 4K, but that's another story. I think the Viltrox does what it's supposed to do, but I don't think it does it well. Basically what I'm going to be doing today is reviewing my first product of 2019. I got the EF-EOS M2 speed booster for my Canon M50. And what I'm going to do in this video is kind of break it up into two parts. The first part's going to be the video portion. So right now I have the speed booster on the M50 right now. I have the Sigma 18 to 35 f1.8 attached to the camera right now, and I believe the lens is set to 20 millimeters right now. Crop factor is basically 0.71 times. That's the focal reducer. There's a 1.6 crop for Canon lenses or Canon cameras, and then you multiply that by 0.71, which will give you 1.136 times. So you take that number, 1.136, and you multiply it by the focal length of any of your lenses, and you will get your true focal length with the speed booster. So let's go ahead and do some math. So if I have the Sigma lens set to 20 millimeters right now, so if I multiply 20 times 1.136, this gives me a 22 millimeter focal length. And if I move this to 18, my 18 millimeter, so it's 18 times 1.136, this gives me a 20 millimeter lens. If I move it to 24, so I multiply 24 times 1.136, this is a 27 millimeter focal range. And since the Sigma is an 18 to 35, it has a couple of stops or a couple of focal lengths that I can, it's a zoom lens. So the next one's a 28. So if I multiply 28 by 1.136, the 28 millimeter setting is actually giving me a 31 millimeter. And then if I take it all the way to the 35 times 1.136, this is 40 millimeter focal length right now. So it's 39.76. So basically a 40 millimeter focal length. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and zoom it back out to 20. I think 20 is a pretty good focal length for what I'm doing here. So the Viltrox speed booster will boost the light coming into your camera. It'll give you well, it doesn't boost it. It just kind of narrows it down, narrows it to the sensor. So it acts like a one-stop faster lens because it's a focal reducer. I guess it takes all of the light coming into the camera and focuses it directly onto the sensor instead of just having that crop. I'm not exactly too sure how it works. If you guys are interested in figuring out or knowing or how a speed booster works, you can go ahead and look online. But this Viltrox EF-EOS M2 has a focal reducer of 0.71, and that's with the video. Since I'm shooting video in 1080p, I take whatever the focal length is of the lens and I multiply it by 1.136. Now, if I decide to shoot in 4K, which is the reason why I ended up getting this speed booster, is so I can utilize the M50 4K feature. Because if you use the M50 without the speed booster and you just shoot in 4K, the 4K actually has a 2.56 crop factor. So whatever focal length of camera you're using, you have to multiply that by 2.56, which gives you a huge zoom in. So when you're vlogging, you're basically like this, and that's not good. Nobody wants to see this. What the speed booster does is it puts the Canon M50 back to its original crop factor, which is 1.6 2.56. So if I'm shooting 4K, if I multiply the original crop factor under the 4K, 2.56, if I multiply that by 0.71, I end up getting the focal reducer of 1.775. So shooting in 4K at 20 millimeter, if I end up multiplying 20 times 1.775, now I'm at a 35 millimeter lens shooting in 4K. Now I can't do that exactly right now because I'm shooting this portion just basically talking about it. And what I'll end up doing is changing the camera settings to the 4K. And when I put it into Premiere Pro, I'm going to go ahead and downgrade from, or down res, I don't know what they call it, down res from 4K to 1080p. So all of the 4K footage will be rendered down to 1080p. So I'm shooting in 4K right now. I have the Sigma 18 to 35 on with the speed booster on the M50. When you shoot in 4K, the autofocus is not the best, so you don't have the dual pixel autofocus. This basically just searches for the most high contrast subject, and it just kind of keys in on there. So if it looks like I'm like a robot and trying not to move my head, well, anytime I move my head, the camera is going to try to zoom in and out, or try to it loses focus, and then it surges again. So the only trick, the only advice that I have is, if you're shooting in 4K, don't. No. The whole reason that you get the speed booster is so you can shoot in 4K. The M50 has a crop factor of 2.56 in 4K. So if you're shooting at 18 millimeter and you multiply that by 2.56, so shooting in 4K at 18 millimeters with the 2.56 crop, you're shooting actually at a focal length of 46 millimeters. When you put the speed booster on at 18 millimeter, you're multiplying it by 1.775, and you're essentially shooting with a 31 millimeter lens, because the speed booster is a 0.71 multiplier. So if you take the crop factor in 4K at 2.56, multiply it by 0.71, that's going to give you 1.775. So you take that number, the 1.775, and you multiply it by any of your focal lengths on your lens, and that's the true focal length that you're actually shooting with. So with the Sigma, if I'm shooting talking head, just doing a vlog, I probably won't go any higher than 18 millimeter. I'll just keep it right at 18 millimeter, which will give me a 31.95 focal length. And that's pretty good. What I'll do now is go ahead and take the speed booster off. I'm still going to shoot in 4K, but I'm going to shoot in 4K without a speed booster. So I'll have the 18 millimeter, which will put it back to a 50 or a 46 millimeter focal length. And I'll show you what that looks like. All right, I get everything all swapped out, and now this is shooting in 4K at 18 millimeter without a speed booster. Essentially, this lens is acting like a 46 millimeter. It's really zoomed in, probably way too close, and I guess that's the entire purpose of getting the speed booster, so you actually have appropriate focal lengths without actually having the camera all the way away from you. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the camera up. Okay, so this is being handheld on the tripod, and I'm at arm's length. So as you can tell, a 46 millimeter lens shooting in 4K is still way too close. So I'm going to go ahead and set this back up, swap out the normal adapter, and I'm going to put the speed booster back on, and we'll see what it looks like. I have the speed booster back on, and as you can tell, this is definitely a more manageable field of view as far as like the lens goes. So again, the Sigma 18 to 35, 18 millimeters on there. It's acting like a 31 or a 32 millimeter, shooting in 4K. And with the face tracking and this thing, you know, shifting in and out of focus, I would not recommend shooting in 4K as a vlog. It's just not worth it. You're struggling with, you know, in and out of focus. Nobody's gonna watch. So right now I've shown 18 millimeter with the speed booster on the desk and handheld. I showed without the speed booster on the desk and handheld at 18 millimeter. That's all 4K. And I think I also showed 1080p with and without the speed booster at 20 and 18. So my next setup is going to be my Pixel 2 XL. I'm going to throw some moment lenses on it and compare the 4K shot on the phone to the 4K shot with the Canon M50. So this is with the moment wide, shooting in 4K. Again, take a look around. Compare this 4K to the 4K shot on the M50 with the speed booster. So 18 millimeter wide on the Pixel 2 XL. I guess this is a good time to tell everybody, if there's ever a time that you guys are interested in purchasing anything that I have here, whether it be Moment lenses or the M50, the lighting, the microphones, I have an affiliate link through Amazon and through Moment. I get a little bit of a commission if you guys purchase any of the items from those links. It's no cost to you. It just kind of reimburses me. Actually, it doesn't reimburse me anything. I bought all this stuff on my own, so I don't get reimbursement for anything. This just adds to my income on YouTube. And to date, I have received $0 on YouTube. Right now, I'm doing this all for fun. If the fun runs out, I'm going to stop doing it. If the fun runs out and I start making money, I'm still going to stop doing it. But if it continues to be fun and I make money, that's just fun. So again, affiliate links down below. If you're interested in anything that I have, go ahead and purchase it through those links. I get a commission if you want. All right, so that's going to do it for the video portion of the speed booster. I know that's a lot of numbers and I repeated myself a whole lot, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what everything looked like at 4K and at 1080p, handheld, sitting at a desk, just all the different options that are out there. So the next part is going to be the stills. It's all the stills are of the same shot. I used the Canon 50mm and the Sigma. I ran through a couple of f-stops just to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. And you'll see horrible vignetting with the Sigma, but no vignetting with the Canon 50mm. So I started with the Canon 50mm with the booster at f1.2. Then without the booster at f1.8. And this is with no booster at f1.8, so you can kind of see the difference. And this is how it's going to go. It's basically going to go with and without the booster, with the 50mm, and I'm changing the f-stop as we go. Some of the f-stops are not available with the booster, and some of the f-stops are available without the booster. And I believe the 50mm can actually go to f22. So onto the Sigma. So this is the Sigma lens, and I just ran through all the focal lengths on the Sigma specifically, going from the 18 to the 20 to the 24 to the 28 to the 35. And as you can tell, the vignetting is present on every focal length with the Sigma with the booster on it. The Viltrox booster, like I mentioned before, narrows down all of the light coming into the camera and focuses directly onto the sensor, which enables the light to be registered a little bit more, so you end up getting that extra f-stop. But it also works on the opposite end. So when you have the light coming in, I believe the smallest that you can stop down is f16. But without the booster, the 50mm, you can actually stop down to f22. The Sigma, on the other hand, when you're taking a look at this, there's vignetting on every single one of the photos that has the booster on it. So for that reason, I don't think I can recommend using the speed booster when taking photos with the Sigma. So that wraps everything up, the video portion and the stills. I hope you guys got something out of that. I know I repeated myself a lot. I just thought it was important for you guys to see all the different options that were out there with the speed booster. And my final thoughts are, I'm not going to keep it. With all the limitations that it has shooting in 4K and with the vignetting with the Sigma, it's not worth me to keep it. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to leave it at that. So just like always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.